George Soros. You know the name. If not, where have you been? Actually, being a bit facetious with you, but there is a not so subtle amount of sincerity to the question. George Soros, birth name Georgi Schwartz, born in Hungary's capital, Budapest, is an enemy of the state of his birth country, as he is of Israel, Russia, Austria, Poland, and an increasing number of European countries who understand this middleman of the Rothschild and Rockefeller families when he and his family during the Second World War collaborated with the Nazis and Russians to slaughter his fellow Jews and profited by this atrocity. He laughs about this very incident in a 1998 interview on 60 Minutes. No guilt, no shame, atheist, considers himself a god. This sounds sane? Evil works through this guy. Happens to also be Justin Trudeau's, Canada's Prime Minister's so-called economic and immigration advisor. Insert choking joke here. He is the face of evil and funds 200 plus hate front organizations to create division, chaos, death. Any negative term one can think of identifies this piece of filth. There are plenty of websites which list these organizations, and to list just one, go to www.freedomoutpost.com. Gosh, there's lots of stuff out there, and even though Google has tried to scrub a lot of this stuff, so it's still out there. Now, before I go further, let me clarify what a Nazi is, because the word is being so misused and thrown out by the most unintelligent individuals, and depending upon which dictionary you use, the wording is still similar. Now, a Nazi is a member of the National Socialist Fascist German Party from 1933 to 45 under Adolf Hitler. Okay, a Nazi was or is someone who believes in socialism, communism, fascism, dictatorship, government control of everything. That's not the alt-right, a word that doesn't even exist, as the left wants you to believe. Now, the left, which identifies the Liberals and NDP in Canada and Democrats in the US, they are the Nazis, okay? People need to get educated and stop with the left's narrative of lies and propaganda with the word. I'm sick of this. And so are any awakened people. Get awakened. I'm helping you here. Well, welcome once again to the So Not PC podcast with Rob Adamus Show. And if you're a new listener, I'm humbled you've taken some time to tune in today. As always, the show is about truth, providing information on a range of subjects that mainstream media either doesn't cover at all, or does, but provides nothing but lies and propaganda about. So I began researching this podcast. Another story came out, finally verifying what alternative news outlets like Drudge Report, Michael Savage's Savage Nation, Rush Limbaugh, InfoWars, Paul Joseph Watson, and a host of others have been talking about for well over a year. George Soros' own spokesman, Michael Vachon, confirmed Soros-funded Fusion GPS. After denying it for as long as he could and without going into a lot of detail about Fusion GPS, I'll state my show's mantra: do your own research. In this case, check the website, www.dailycaller.com, and others for some details on what Fusion GPS is, who are involved, like the Clintons, Obama, and that cabal. And as time winds down on these individuals, they will be charged with, hopefully, a plethora of felonies as part of a conspiracy that will show believers and current unbelievers the biggest crime or crimes in the history of the United States. And fortunately, the exposure of this coverage is coming to light day by day. Fusion GPS is but only one story of Soros' devil-inspired history. He funded and rigged Hillary Clinton's Democratic Nomination Committee in 2016 presidential campaign, and even with a confirmed 5.5 million illegal votes in her favor. Illegal votes meaning coming from illegal immigrants and dead people. She still lost. Thank God. Tells you how hated the Clintons are by the citizens of the U.S., and these Luciferian worshippers just won't go away. Hillary, as I like to call her, continues tours and TV appearances almost 2 years later, blaming everybody and their pets as the reason she lost the election. Has she blamed you yet? Don't worry, if not, she will at some point. So don't feel left out. By the way, Chelsea Clinton is married to a Soros nephew. So you see the tie-ins here? What I'm doing here is giving you, the audience, some groundwork on Soros and his ties to the U.S., and now I'm going to segue his ties to Canada, specifically to Justin Trudeau and the Liberal and NDP parties, both on the federal and provincial levels. Interestingly, I watched a number of truthful alternative news outlets the other day, which uncovered the amount of money, at least found thus far, Soros has funded to his propaganda machines. $246 million. That's just this year. And the likelihood this number is significantly higher given this is just within the U.S. It's not Canada and elsewhere. And as I go into Soros's foray into Canada with a significant amount of evidence showing he rigged Trudeau and the Liberals' 2015 win, there will be some back and forth into related references back to the U.S. Given his and his fellow elitist globalist agenda, which is being exposed and talked about daily by many alternative news outlets. So on to Canada. In previous podcasts, I mentioned Canadian TV stations, the CBC, CTV, and Global, that George Soros and elitist friends have their bony hands fully into through a number of front organizations. And finally, CBC admitted of their relationship with Soros, something I'd been telling people privately for a number of years. Brian Lilley, journalist, author, columnist, host of his own TV show, co-founder of the Rebel Media with Ezra Levant. His website, by the way, is at www.brianlilley, that's spelled Lilley.com, has an article on his website from April 18th of this year speaking of CBC's admission of this relationship that you can peruse. You think for one second, the CBC would ever provide non-biased journalism, especially when it comes to Soros and his puppet Justin Trudeau? One answer only: no. Trudeau's Liberal Party gave the CBC $1 billion plus to continue existing. So where do you think that their support lies? Had it not been for the money, they probably would no longer exist. And this front organization provides only negative stories about President Trump. Now, this is an abomination. As someone who's lived on both sides of the border, I have firsthand, on-site, inside information of Canada's and U.S. political landscapes. The lies versus the truth from people on the ground. Not mainstream media lies on Canadian U.S. TV, radio, newspapers, and magazines. Yes, internet too, but the internet at least provides a platform for alternative news, the truthful news for the public. Realize the internet can be and is a propaganda platform as well, and I understand, especially as a deep researcher with a large network base. The internet can be an overwhelming place to disseminate truth from lies. So here's what I say to you. When you do your research, do not, I repeat, do not go to left-wing media organizations for your information, as this will not provide you with truth. Whether you at this moment in time believe what I'm saying or not, having first-hand information is a heck of a lot more accurate as to who a Soros, Trudeau, or Trump is, than relying on fake news media. I'll take Trump, by the way, over a Trudeau or Soros every time, any day. Now, one of my previous episodes was about the fascist, hate-filled violence promoting terrorist group Antifa. Soros funds this group, mostly made up of socially inept, live in their mama's basements white boys who show up at prayer get-togethers and peaceful protests with the sole purpose of igniting confrontation, hitting innocent bystanders, and attacking businesses. Does this sound like anti-fascism or fascism to you? Many of these individuals are enticed to join Antifa through Craigslist ads, where Soros' organizations pay these degenerates an hourly or flat rate to take part in these protests. Explain to me, or any sane person, how this fake philanthropist and peace promoter is promoting peace here. Now, Soros is currently 88 years old, and I read a ton of social media comments where people's desire is to hear this face of evil has died. Based on his age, I'd say his day is coming soon. However, once he's descended into the pit of hell, he has sons being groomed to continue his path of destruction. This has been a natural continuation by lineage of elitist, globalist families through the millennia, and considering many globalist families have intermarried or bred by incest to, quote, keep it in the family. This has led to genetic, call them mutations, where psychotic behavior, anatomical deformities like the Habsburg jaw, and hemophilia are some of the outcomes. All right, back to Soros. Outlined some things earlier. Now let's continue some of his atrocities. Okay, I mentioned earlier, his family profited by helping the Nazis slaughter his own people, the Jews, in World War II, and he laughs about it. In fact, he's proud of it. One of the most horrific atrocities in the history of this world, and he laughs about it. Let's let that sink in. Gives billions to left-wing, meaning liberal and NDP parties in Canada, Democrat Party in the U.S., and socialist parties and dictators around the world. Also, rigs U.S. and Canada elections among many countries, including through the use of his voting machines, which change votes in favor of his paid-off candidates and parties. Also funds mainstream media to spew lies and propaganda. See where I'm going with this? Most of his money he devalues, meaning he bankrupts countries' currencies to create socialism, communism, Islamic ideologies where the country's citizens are now controlled. Venezuela is a classic example of a recent situation with this. He considers himself a messianic figure, in other words, a god. No, Soros, you're not. He funds Islamic terrorists to overtake a country and impose Sharia law. Funds 200 plus front hate organizations, but also fronts organizations like Greenpeace. For those of you SJWs out there, yes, Greenpeace, who are part of a large NGO transportation scheme to boat military-age militants, not refugees like mainstream media reports, into countries into Europe. He launders money for drug cartels, conducts drugs for weapons deals, and recently invested into social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Google, Spotify, and Pandora to silence free speech and ban conservative and truth news views, like the show InfoWars, for example, which they are using as a straw man, specifically down in the States. And if they take them down, everybody falls like a domino after that. So it's imperative at this point, because the purchase of these platforms was done roughly 3.5 months out of the U.S. midterm elections. And it's imperative, and I'm saying this, it's imperative that the Republicans win a majority to keep what I consider the insane Democratic Party from any control over U.S. citizens. Because if any of you were watching or listening to the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, I've never seen a poor man and his family be raked over the coals the way this happened. And for those of you who've ever purchased anything on Amazon, or at least know who Amazon is, he uses Amazon as a globalist front organization. I would suggest you shouldn't buy from Mr. Jeff Bezos. Okay? And in amongst all these things, he funds child sex trafficking and pedophile rings. He's a main player in the Globalist Agenda, meaning Agenda 21, which transformed itself into Agenda 30. So, the list goes on and on. After all of this, I can't begin to think that you even think that this would be a nice guy in any way. And though someone like this identifies what evil is, and too many people still believe there's no way to fight him and his co-conspirators, there is an upside here. We're still talking about people. They may be demonically possessed, certainly, but they're still people. Perceived power that money brings does not automatically give anyone a right, nor an ability to win a fight over the collective soul of the great people of our planet. So we as a group have a power, a spirit that far outweighs what a Soros, Rothschild, Rockefeller, any elitist can do to us. Realize the infinitesimal power in each of us is God-given, and we can create positive change in any way, shape, or form if you truly believe and take some action. So until next episode, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm humbled and grateful you decided to spend some time with me. Hope you've learned some new things, and we'll share the information because that's obviously exceptionally important. Be safe. Be learned. Ask questions. Do your own research. Grow your faith. And may God bless you and your family spiritually, financially, physically, and emotionally. Good night.